Assalamualaikum and welcome everyone to today's session. Thank you for joining. So first of all, let me introduce myself and the topic. So my name is Ditra Bulan and I will be the moderator for today. I'm part of Crescent Ratings, a research team responsible for major publications such as the Global Muslim Travel Index. Our session today will discuss the Muslim sports tourism market, a preview of our recently published report. So to touch on the topic, sports mega events are among the most powerful drivers of international tourism, yet the Muslim traveler segment remains largely undeserved in sports tourism strategy. This panel examines what it takes for destinations and organizing bodies to deliver genuinely Muslim-friendly sports experiences at scale, from stadium infrastructure and fan experiences to media narratives and post-event legacy planning. Our objective today is to position Muslim sports tourism as a strategic priority for destinations and event organizers, moving the conversation from awareness to actionable strategy by drawing on data from the MasterCard Crescent Rating Sports Tourism Report. So before we get into the specifics, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves and their background. We'll start from Faras and then continue to Nimrah, if that's okay.
Sure. So as you can see, my name is Faras Ghani. I work with Al Jazeera. I'm one of the digital editors. I've been a journalist now for about 21 years. I started off as a sports journalist, hence the sports background. And then I was following, we're based in Qatar, so I was following Qatar 2022 very closely. And when it comes to work, in addition to human rights and migration, I look at how sports plays a critical role in societies, the socio-political impact of sports on communities, and sort of the intersection of sports, politics, and the culture aspect of things.
Thank you, Farah. So we'll move on to Nimrah.
All right. Assalamualaikum, everyone. My name is Nimrah. I'm based in the U.S. in Houston, Texas specifically. I run a consulting company called Siraat. We have different verticals that we do, but one of the major ones is we do integration with the Muslim fan experience with different teams and leagues. So we've worked with the NBA, NFL, MLS, also FIFA, to incorporate Muslim needs and experiences into their everyday games. And the other couple of things that we do within our consulting firm is we work with Muslim athletes who are pro to do community impact work that they would like to do in the community, like giving back social impact work. And then the third vertical that we're currently actually working on and launching is creating an alliance of all the Muslim athletes across the US and the world, just to get everyone together talking and, in numbers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Farah and Nimrah, both for the introduction. So we would like to thank you for allotting your time for the session. Now that we've known your the panelist's background and the topic, we'll jump right into the questions. So first of all, sports tourism makes up around 10% of the global tourism expenditure. And with more people invested in their health due to encouragement in social media, it will continue to grow. So the MasterCard Crescent Rating Sports Tourism Report highlights a significant untapped opportunity in sports tourism. In both of your views, what is the single biggest reason the Muslim segment remains underserved?
I think yeah, sure, I can go first. So I understand the Muslim community in the sports world is one of the largest fan bases, I feel like, across the globe, where there's so many Muslims that use sports as an out, just only one, because it's halal fun for us to do. And two, it's, active and Muslims, it's sunnah to be active, right? So the reason it's being underserved, especially here in the United States, what I'm seeing is there's no real integration of the Muslim fan experience into the games. For example, we have NBA games, finals are going on right now. You have a family of Muslims going to a game for start to finish is at least 3 to 4 hours experience. There's no halal food being served. There's these families are staying at the game. They're eating snacks just because there's no proper meals. There's no prayer space. When Maghrib comes in, Muslims are going to want to pray somewhere. So especially if you have tens of thousands of Muslims at these events, having a proper prayer space is not only a security issue and safety issue because people will be in the hallways, doing what they need to do. But it's also just, very nice accommodation. I think they're using Muslims as treated as a nice to have segment instead of a core growth strategy of how to integrate Muslim fans. Because we Muslims do, like I said, it's one of the most halal funds that we can do. And we are willing to spend money on it. Here, especially in the US, the economic power of Muslims is like really high. So if teams and leagues and other people who are putting on these experiences can understand how to give Muslims the full experience, or they're going to want Muslims coming back for more. And I've noticed this, especially with the Muslim family nights that we've put on. We have the grandmas, the kids, they're all coming out just to this one event because they know from start to finish, they'll be taken care of. Whereas any other given day, they may not come out. So just integrating these small things into their game day experience, I feel like will go from underserved to creating a proper operational way to create fan engagement for these Muslims.
Thank you, Nimrah. I think we'll move on to Faras first of all.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo Nimrah's view on the whole lack of integration, and also the phrase that she shows, the nice to have strategy. It's obviously, it's a lot of optics. It's a lot of visuals that we want to accommodate as many Muslims or any other religion fans as possible. But again, there's a big gap between the optics and the reality on the ground. And that's not, I mean, I'm not very closely associated and I'm not following the US physical sports locations, but across the world as well. I mean, prayer halls, yeah, some places, but there's a big gap between what exists and what in reality should exist. So that's one thing. But I think one of the other things I would want to mention why this is such a undeserved or a sort of untapped market is also it's also a cultural thing, because obviously if you look at the Muslim population in the US, and when you compare it to, say, the significant Muslim populations across the world, say the Pakistans, the Indias, the Indonesias, the Malaysias, it's kind of like a cultural thing as well. I mean, sports tourism is not something that's on top of your list. It's not something that you actually sit down with a family and say, hey, we're going to go and watch Wimbledon, or we're going to go and watch the NBA finals, or we're going to go and watch the football World Cup. I mean, people have priorities when it comes to financial spending. The disposable income is considerably less in that part of the world as well. So I think with the chunk of the Muslim population across the world in those three countries, not the expat population in, say, Europe or North America or Australia or those parts of the world, when you look at the actual physical native population, Muslim population in the world, it's a matter of the cultural side of things. It's obviously disposable income. It's, I mean, people would go for tourism from within the countries that they're in, instead of like making sports tourism one of the core priorities in their everyday life and parts of the family life as well. So I think those two combined impacts the whole global Muslim sports tourism market across the world.
Okay, thank you, both Faras and Nimrah. So we can highlight that probably it's because of the culture and also the lack of integration of Muslims into consideration. So I wanted to ask, it was pertaining the NBA playoffs or finals. So we can say that it's quite lacking in the integration of Muslims in the whole area. Can you point to a specific sports mega event or destination that got the Muslim fan experience right, and what they did from that others can learn?
Sure, I can start. So I wasn't there, unfortunately, but the Qatar World Cup 2022, I think that's like the prime example of what you can do to integrate Muslim fan base. I mean, granted, it was also in a Muslim country, so that made things easier. But I took some of the things that I saw happening there And working with the FIFA here in the US, I've been trying to integrate some of those elements into a non-Muslim country. Because we are, like, I'm in Houston. The countries we're already hosting include Saudi Arabia and Uzbekistan. Like, those are Muslim predominant countries. Our city is going to be filled with Muslims. Our infrastructure here in Houston area is not ready for that many Muslims unless we prepare for it. The masjids, the halal food, making sure they're accommodated for whatever they need. So I've been working actually with the way it's set up this year, because it's 16 different host cities. Each city has its own host teams. I've been working with different host teams to integrate, making sure they integrate a halal food vendors and prayer space into their areas. So also, they have a fan festival area for FIFA, and so they're definitely integrating into that. They have they even I just had an email this morning, like, which way do I point the arrow for the Qibla, like things like that, which make us feel welcome. There'll be proper signage, there'll be a clean area, there will be a wudu area even integrated into that space. So when the Houston fan base comes into the festival, they'll be like, okay, this is where we can go do our salah, because fan fest is supposed to run all day. So integrating those small things from what we learned in Qatar, we're nowhere near what they did perfectly, but integrating some of those small elements that we did learn from there into the next few World Cups and and beyond, even beyond FIFA, I think is something we can learn really well from that host committee in Qatar.
Okay, thank you, Nimrah. So moving on to Faras, maybe from your experience of more than 10 years in sports journalism, do you have more examples that we can take from?
I think, again, Qatar 2022 was a prime example. But again, having said that, just like Nimrah said, it's a Muslim country, so it made things very, very easy. However, having said that, because it was a FIFA event, FIFA had their own plans and strategies in place. Alcohol consumption being the biggest thing. And on the eve of the World Cup, Qatar said, no, we're not going to have alcohol at the stadiums. And that was the biggest factor that actually changed the entire landscape of the tournament, because it's not just the availability of alcohol, it's also the whole the image that's created by saying no to alcohol. People kind of felt safer. We spoke to a lot of people. We'll come back to that a bit later as well. But I think, again, it was easy for Qatar to do it because obviously halal food was already there, the masjids were already there, alcohol wasn't being consumed on the streets. But again, it's the message that you want to put across. It's the message that you want to say, this is a Muslim country, we're inviting. And because it was based in the Middle East, it was actually easier for a lot of people from the Far East, from Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, from North Africa to actually come and attend. And it also was the fact that so many people have relatives, friends, family in the country. It made it cheaper for them to attend. So there was more and more influx of Muslim tourists and Muslim fans from across the world. And obviously Morocco did so well. So even last minute, there was flights coming in from Morocco. But again, it's the whole image, it's the whole message that you give across saying, hey, we're going to tie down, we're going to clamp down on something that's against the culture, against the religion, whatever, regardless of how much money we have to pay, how much financial compensation we need to do. But it was, again, the branding and something. And it's not necessarily something that other countries can learn from, because, again, there will be no alcohol ban in the States, because alcohol companies are such a big sponsors of these sports events, not just football thing, but also other events that I don't think we're going to see that. I'm not too sure about Saudi Arabia. They're still long way off. But again, I don't think we'll see that at any other major event in the world, that you'll have no alcohol at the stadiums in a global event and stuff. But again, small lessons learned and how other people can adapt to it. It was the respect. It was the sort of just embracing people from cultures, from faiths, from religions, from across the world, despite all the criticism and all the harsh questions and queries that were put across on Qatar. It was kind of like this is what you can do if you really want to have one of these events where you want to have some sort of representation from your religion and culture.
Okay. Thank you so much, Faras and both Nimrah. So I think we'll sidetrack a bit from the general questions, and I'll have to have some specific questions for each of the panelists. So touching on the subject of your background in sports journalism, From your experience covering major sporting events, including the Qatar World Cup, how does media storytelling around Muslim fans shape destination perception, and is the industry doing enough to influence the narrative positively? So this touches on what you've already said before.
Yeah, so I mean, Qatar 2022 was an exception because ever since it was awarded the World Cup in 2010, we saw a lot of Qatar bashing. We saw a lot of bashing, which was based in Islamophobia, and also a lot of racism factors in there as well. That's how that Qatar, like the Middle East, doesn't have a football history. Qatar doesn't have a football history. It just seemed like it was just Europe and South America's responsibility or something, not responsibility, but only they can hold like major sporting events in the world. So there was a lot of, I mean, a lot of criticism was aimed at migrant workers, which was justified because the situation wasn't that great. And I did a lot of stories covering those aspects as well. But again, because of so much criticism, because of so much spotlight, things actually improved. To what extent, I don't have the exact numbers, but things started taking the turn for the better. So it was a lot of criticism was justified because of the way people were treated and this and that. But a lot of it was like misplaced. A lot of it was just like non-stop criticism and a lot of like Islamophobia and everything else as well. So it was all negative, and it's just that it didn't stop when the World Cup started. It was I remember there was a as soon as I think the day one of the World Cup, there was a major news outlet, global news outlet, which was complaining that in the fan zone, there wasn't a lot of shade for the fans to be covered in. What they didn't mention that 3 of the 4 games to be taking place at Qatar 22 would be held after sunset. So you don't actually need that shade for the fans, right? But because the aim of the coverage was criticism, that's the first thing they took up. They talked about heats, right? We see heat having a major impact at the US Open. We see heat having a major impact at the Australian Open. We see heat impact will have a major impact at the US, Canada, and Mexico World Cup as well. But because the idea was to just criticize the host, right, left, center. And again, I'm not here to defend Qatar, but I'm just sort of talking about the whole media landscape. The aim was to just criticize it, right, left, center. They started talking about that. Then they started talking about the whole banning of alcohol, right? As if it was the end of the world, as if it was football cannot stand the banning of alcohol, as if a football game for 90 minutes, 120 minutes or whatever cannot go beyond you holding a beer glass in your hand while at the stadium. So it was just like how things were perceived by certain segments of media. And I think that actually played into the hands of for Qatar as well, because when they saw that Qatar was sort of it withstood all that criticism and it was just adamant that no, we're going to do things our way. It actually created this positive image saying, hey, here's someone, a small country, I mean, every story that you would read would say Qatar, a tiny Gulf nation. So yeah, okay, tiny Gulf nation, but it would withstand things, the norm, how you would see how things happen normally. And sort of it played into their hands. We also did a lot of stories outside the stadiums, inside the stadium, on the whole banning of alcohol thing. And surprisingly, it wasn't just the Muslim female fans. It wasn't just the Muslim male fans that were more, they felt safer. It was actually fans from North America. It was fans from Europe. It was fans from Brazil, of all places. I remember I did a story, I don't know which match it was. It was probably a Brazil match at one of the stadiums. And they were like, there is no way that we could be out watching a football match after midnight in our country and feel this safe. So that's the kind of image that was created because of all these moves that they take. And also, I mean, it just kind of like you start doing stories about culture, you start doing stories about not religion, but how all these decisions, all these laws, regulations impact the journey of a fan, and not just a single fan, not just a single male fan, but you need to keep in mind that it's not just, say, 20, 30, 40-year-old white male that are football fans. It's families, right? Kids enjoy football as well, women enjoy football as well, so they all need to feel welcome in a safe environment. And by doing that, by the messaging that was put across and the stories that we ran, it was kind of like that, yes, okay, this is something that we can go enjoy as a family, be it 4 o'clock in the afternoon, be it after midnight. So I think that made a big difference to how this event was perceived. And going forward as well, that's how things can be sort of taken closer to the Muslim family fans who want to come and enjoy a game of football, or even a game of cricket, or NBA or NFL, or whatever sport that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you so much, Faras, for that insight. So media does play a big role in moving the perception from what was negative to what is now shifting to positive vibes. So second of all, to Nimrah, the questions of strategy and community. So through your work with Siraat Strategies, you aim to bridge sports organizations and Muslim communities. What do sports bodies and event organizers consistently get wrong when you try to engage with Muslim audiences?
Yeah, honestly, I think the one biggest mistake that I see when they try to engage with Muslim communities as an audience, they think of it, again, as an audience, but not a partner. So engagement often happens too late, after the decisions are made, not while they're being shaped. And so what you get are like these campaigns and not ecosystems. And the one example I can think of is MBA headquarters was just trying to put on a simple Ramadan Mubarak post, like on Instagram, right? And I think as Muslims, we enjoy that kind of things because we see that we're being included, but they didn't know what to write, or they said they had the wording wrong. So the year after, I had reached out to them and be like, hey, I love the efforts, but let's do the wording right. So make sure you're not, this seems like you're just checking a box, not actually engaging with us. So the shift was a little bit uncomfortable, like to have that conversation with them, but bring it up. But, if we bring the Muslim voices into that room early, not just to validate, but to co-create the ecosystem with them. Because the community isn't something that you want to just market to, you want to build with the Muslim communities, because we are here to stay. We are a part of the ecosystem. And when you do that well, you'll not just unlock the Muslim community networks, but you'll create a long-term loyalty. And that's what these teams strive for, creating that long-term fan, because at the end of the day for them, it's revenue for them, right? Like if they get the kids in the door at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of their age, then they'll be lifetime fans. Think of all those season ticket holders, the merch, everything that those will buy. But if they're just using it as a transaction, it's not going to work well. They have to authentically create as part of their ecosystem to create that long-term fan. But that starts with including us early on, not just, slapping something on Instagram and thinking that, that checks the box.
Yeah. So for inclusion of Muslim communities, it's probably best to not have it as an afterthought, but also integrating into the whole ecosystem, so Muslims feel much more included. Okay, I think I would really love to continue on with the session, but unfortunately we have limited time. So before we end off this session, is there any concluding comments that both Faras and Nimrah wants to add?
No, I think this has been a great conversation. I think if you start creating these ecosystems for Muslims starting now, I think sports has a long way to go. We have LA 28 coming up here in the US. We have, FIFA's in like 60 days. But there's so many more things that are happening on the global ecosystem now with sports. So if you start thinking about these things now, not only the sports will thrive from the fan base, but I think Muslim fans will also feel included in wanting to participate in this type of travel ecosystem of sports.
Yeah, I think it's just again, as Nimrah alluded to as well. It should not be an afterthought. It should not be like a checkbox kind of thing that you just fill. Again, you mentioned this at the start of the conversation that it's 10% of the global tourism market, and that's a significant number in there. And if you look at the Muslim population across the world, and you look at the increasing number of sports events taking place across the world, and if you now look at the increasing interest in the sports event by young Muslims as well, solo travelers or couples or young families and stuff. It's an untapped market which could bring in a lot of cash for these. But again, only when it's sort of when these Muslim travels are part of the conversation from the start, not just right at the end. You just build a prayer hall and then you just check the box and that's it. So it needs to be a whole experience, and it needs to be advertised as a sports tourism experience as well for these solo travelers, couples, young families, or whatever, to actually not just enjoy sort of the sports side of things, but also the whole tourism aspect of things as well, and the whole experience per se. And that's something that the authorities, the officials, they need to sort of invest more in, not just in terms of finances, but also in terms of thinking and how to sort of reach those audiences.
Okay. Thank you once again for both our panelists for sharing their knowledge and insights during the sessions. We hope that this will push stakeholders to have a better understanding of the Muslim travel market, especially the sports tourism market. So thank you once again to the audience for joining us today. Please do tune in our other sessions with interesting topics such as using intelligence to win the Muslim travel market, and unpack how the Gen Z Muslim travel segment differs from previous generations. Now, I think this concludes our sessions for today. Wassalamualaikum, and have a great day, everyone.